Hello everybody, welcome to Find My Past from Home, the genealogy series designed with you in mind. My name is Ellie, I work for Find My Past, and today's family history session, which is pre-recorded, is going to be a little bit different. So we're actually going to be talking about working in genealogy and working at Find My Past as women. So I am really privileged to be able to speak to some of my colleagues within Findmypast about what it's like to work in this industry and what it means to us all to work in genealogy and in the roles that we have as well. Now, you'll have seen a few of us dotted around on Find My Past from Home. You'll have seen me from social media. You'll have seen Niall from content, Alex from PR, plus our lovely data and licensing team, our content team. But there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes. We've got engineers, designers, product owners, customer service representatives, marketing, finance, the list goes on. And all of us are dedicated to helping you discover more about your ancestors' stories. So I'm delighted today to welcome Jen Baldwin and Alex Omani. Hello to both of you.
Hi, Ellie.
Hi.
Jen, I'm sure you need no introduction by this point, but if you could just introduce yourself to the rest of our lovely genealogy community.
Absolutely. Ellie, thanks so much for inviting me to do this with you today. It's really awesome. So Jen Baldwin, and I'm based in Colorado in the United States. I am the North American content manager for Findmypast, and I also run our global ambassador program. So I do a lot with records and I do a lot with genealogists every day. It's really exciting work.
Fantastic. And Alex, over to you. I mean, you'll be a face that I don't think anybody in our community has seen yet. So
How do you? So I'm a software engineer, and my name's Alex, sorry. I've been working at Findmypast for almost a year now, based out of the London office. So I actually haven't worked in the London office because we've pretty much been in lockdown since I started. So yeah, and that's what I do. So my product that I work on primarily is the tree itself. So making things look good on your family tree. So that's
fantastic. We also do have a fourth guest on today. Sadly, because she has a back-to-back schedule, she couldn't make the recording, but she has sent some videos to us to be able to include in this. So I will play the first of her videos now.
Hi, my name's Sam Otter. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Findmypast. What does that mean? So that means that my team look after all customer conversations. So whether that's a conversation directly with a customer who's got a query about something they're doing within our product, or if it's a conversation through an email with a customer, or it's a creation of a TV ad. So that's my team, and that's what they look after. So they look after all communications to and from our customers.
And that's Sam. So she's, as I said, she's kindly recorded some videos for us to play during our discussion. And I suppose the first thing I wanted to chat about with you is what led you to apply for your role, and I suppose more broadly, at Findmypast. Jen, would you like to kick us off with that?
Sure. So I've actually been researching and considered myself a genealogist most of my life. So the idea of working for a genealogy company was always kind of this far afield thing. I never thought that anything like that would ever happen. I assumed that it would be a hobby. But I went to a national conference a few years ago, and I met an individual who was working for Findmypast at the time, Josh Taylor. And he and I had a conversation, and that eventually led to working together on a couple different projects. And at some point, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months after the conference, he said, "We've got this part-time thing at Findmypast. Do you think you'd be interested in some contract work for 6 months?" And I jumped at that opportunity. And so eventually kind of wiggled my way into a full-time position. I was invited to help at Roots Tech with the Findmypast team that first year. And I still wasn't technically a full-time employee. And I just ran around the conference like crazy and just worked as hard as I could to impress everybody that was there from London. And eventually I was technically interviewed and offered a position, a full-time position. I actually started with the marketing team and kind of moved my way around the company.
Amazing. I think my story is actually a little bit similar, but I'll come to that in a moment. I do have a short video to play from Sam as to what led her to her current role. So I'll just play that, and then we'll talk about Alex, how you got into Findmypast as well.
Actually, it was the role itself. Initially, it was, this is intriguing. I'm interested in what this business has been about and what it has the potential to do. I've always been interested in history. I do wish I did it as an A-level, but I possibly would have got better grades if I had done history. But I'm fascinated by what went on in the past. I'm fascinated about the times and the culture and the stories of the past. I would be the one within the family. I would happily sit and listen to the older generation talk and tell me stories about what their childhood was like, and I'm fascinated by it. So that's so both facets really that drew me to Findmypast, the role, but also what Findmypast does as a business. It's to bringing to life stories that otherwise would be lost. So that's what fascinates me.
And I must admit as well, I'm that person in my family who is really, really into history. Is that you as well, Jen?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. I was always the person growing up who set the table for Thanksgiving dinner, which was always hosted at my parents' house. And I would intentionally seat myself between my uncle and my dad and directly across from my grandmother. So I was right in the middle of the adult conversation, like no kids table for me. And my siblings are like, what are you doing? Like, come down here where the action is. And I was like, no, this is so good. Like you don't know what you're missing.
What about you, Alex?
In our family, it's everyone's interested in it. I'm really fortunate to actually have not had to do a huge amount of research myself, but have a full family tree because my uncle and my dad have been busy scanning all of the documents in and putting things in places. So yeah, they're really interested, and I think a lot of my interest as well came from them. So yeah, I'm lucky in that one.
What drew you to apply for Findmypast in your current role then?
So at first, I'm kind of the same as Sam. It wasn't actually anything to do with the product itself. I had just finished a coding bootcamp, Founders and Coders. So I'd only just kind of got to a point where I thought I could apply for a software role. And I was looking for a company that would be super supportive and had time and would be able to kind of invest in me and my learning and stuff like that, because I was really keen. I had a lot to give, but I wanted to I needed to be in a place where I would get that support as well, that kind of time to learn. And then, yeah, actually, I did have someone ask me in the interview as well, like, I can see you've done, because I did history at university, history and languages.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, so like, is it also good for you, like for the history side? I was like, yes, I love it. So all of the kind of technical questions, they came in, and I was actually really excited to look for somewhere that was, again, as I say, has been really supportive, but I also do really like the product. So I've put my family tree in there. I quite enjoy like sharing the new news articles and stuff that I get. So yeah, I like having that recorded. It's great.
Yeah. There's sorry, Jen, you were about to say something.
Oh, no, I wasn't actually.
I thought I heard you speak.
Since you opened the door, Ellie, Alex, what was your focus on history in university?
So my final year, I did British colonialism, and specifically from the angle of race and gender. And so I was really fortunate in that year. And yeah, I loved it. Funnily enough, I was the only female on that course in the last year.
Really?
And so I had like quite a different, I wouldn't say a different approach. Like a lot of the students I was doing it with were really open as well. But it was interesting. And so when we did our series earlier, or kind of late last year, to do with especially British colonialism and the fallout and those kind of the impact that colonists had, especially on kind of the way that we've built race and gender into something that's very structured now, unfortunately. I loved that. That was really interesting for me as well. So I get a lot out of the history as much as I get out of being part of the tech team as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I was very, very similar. I did a history degree, although I did focus on, I used to think the older the better for history. I was very firmly a medievalist. And, you know, I came out of university and, you know, I was applying for jobs, and one came up in Findmypast's customer support team. And I loved it. I was able to connect with some fantastic people day in, day out. You know, people who were just so passionate about what they do and their family and their legacy. And that was really, really rewarding. And then a role came up in the content team and in social media. So I applied for that. And I've been in this role nearly 2 years now, I think. Yeah, I think it's 2 years. And yeah, it's just a huge privilege. You know, I'm able to play to strengths in terms of my creativity, but also my love of history. It's just, I've had people say to me, other guests on Findmypast from home, you know, they've said to me, Ellie, you've got the best job in the world. And I do feel like I do, genuinely. I just think it's a real privilege.
Yeah, I hear that occasionally as well. You know, the idea that we're involved in preserving history, I mean, directly, right? Currently the company is working on preservation of the 1921 census, and each one of us has a little part to play in that. Whether we work on it every day or not, it, you know, is kind of irrelevant at this point. Like, we're doing something that will preserve history for generations to come. And that's a huge, I don't even know the word for it, I guess, blessing, in my opinion, right? I mean, that's something that we'll all have an impact on, and our children's children will look back and go, hey, I can access the 1921 census, and my ancestor had something to do with that. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the next thing I wanted to discuss is what is it about working for Findmypast in particular that sort of gets you up in the morning and thinks, yes, this is going to be a good day. Yes, I can make a difference. Yes, I've got exciting projects to work on, or whatever it is. Why do you enjoy it? Alex, if I could start with you.
I mean, coming from the tech side of it, I love the kind of challenge of building something that will not just work for the hundredth person, but could work for the 1,000th person, and making sure that we're building products that are like accessible to everyone, and make sure that they can actually use something and it be like very useful to them. And also on a personal side as well, like I get to learn. I really like having so many challenges at work. Like, you know, that's what's very exciting. And a lot of the challenges are actually like coming from the customers as well. They're asking us to kind of do certain things, or they're saying like, oh, well, why isn't this working? And we're able to respond to that as well. And there is a great feedback loop with our customers, with our product. And I guess, yeah, a lot of the learning and making sure that we're building a really cool product. It's just exciting. Yeah. Also, I have a great team. I should mention.
They paid you to say that.
I know, they paid me to say that. No, I work in a team of 5 devs, so I'm one of 5. And we have our line manager, we have our product manager, and a lot of those product decisions will come in from our product manager. And yeah, we work really well together, I think. So we do a lot of this thing called core pairing. So we actually, or pair programming. So we have a few hours every day where we don't work by ourselves on our kind of tech problems, we'll work together. So we're always like swapping back ideas, and especially as a junior, I get to learn a lot from the people who have had 10, 15 years of experience. So that's really great as well. So yeah, lots of bits.
Every day is a school day, isn't it, Jen?
Absolutely. Yep. I was going to say that my comments will mirror Alex's a lot, actually. I get to learn so much in this role. It's unbelievable. I mean, I get to learn about the world of tech and code that I never would have been exposed to before. And my vocabulary has increased unbelievably over the last 7 years. Like I know more about SEO and e-commerce strategy than I ever imagined I would. And I think that's a huge benefit to someone who spends, a lot of their time online, right? I do as a genealogist, obviously right now, especially during the pandemic, I do all my research online. So knowing more about SEO and how the internet actually works is really hugely beneficial to me as a researcher. But I also get to work with genealogists from around the world. I mean, right now our ambassador program is expanding in Australia, and I have never done Australian research before. So I get the chance to dialogue with professionals in a totally new place to me, in a new territory, with a new outlook on research methodology and strategy. And it's exciting because there's never a dull moment. I mean, the list of books that I have to read about things that interest me, that I learn about because of Findmypast, is massive. I have, I'll never stop learning. And I love that. You asked, Ellie, at the beginning, what gets me up every morning? Well, I have to admit the time difference is also a huge benefit, actually. Like some days are really challenging, right? Monday morning, it comes very early. But at the same time, I've been working from home for almost 8 years. And as a mom, I love that because the balance between my work life and my personal life is actually relatively smooth at this point. So my daughter is almost 12. She'll be 12 next week. And I get to, when she was in elementary school, I put her on the school bus every morning and I was there to greet her every day. And I never had that growing up. And now as she's entering her teen years, I'm going, I'm going to be there for her in a way that my parents couldn't be. And I just feel like the company offers and has always offered me a real value in my ability to kind of control my own schedule, control my own work life, control my own pace. So as long as I get my work done and I do my projects well, then I can kind of navigate that path for myself. And I think that's something that is rare, unfortunately. I hope more businesses and more people around the world are opening up to that. And I think the pandemic is doing that in a lot of ways, but it's also pulling women back in a certain way as well, as more women leave the workforce and have to stay at home or, make that decision. And I just feel really, really lucky that I don't have to do that. I'm really grateful, I suppose, to the company for offering that environment for all of us.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's a very supportive environment. Whether you want to learn something new, whether you want to work cross-functionally, whether you it could be a variety of reasons. I come back to the learning element. We started Findmypast from home a year ago now, and through this program that we've put on for you at home, it has been a huge privilege to be able to not only connect with you, but also to be able to speak to all of these people and these experts that I would never normally have the opportunity to speak to. And Jen, I remember something you told me a while back. Can't have been that long ago. You recently interviewed somebody on Findmypast from home, and then we were speaking afterwards, and you were saying, "Yeah, I need to order that book. I need to read up on this." And you make notes as you go, and you note down all of these things that you need to read. And yeah,
I did order those books, by the way. They're sitting on my desk now. I got the last one yesterday. I can't wait to dig in.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And I love that, the three of us, we are in three completely different separate teams.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, we still appear at meetings together, and we get to do things like this together. And normally when we were in the office, we actually would be able to see each other in person as well.
Yeah. No, but especially for me, like having started completely remotely, I think we've done quite a good job of adapting. I think at first, there was loads of Zoom meetings, a bit of like overkill at the beginning. I think that's us and all companies going into a kind of a global pandemic. But the flexibility that we've been given to kind of, you take slightly longer lunches should we need to go for walks, like make like priority on our mental health as well, making sure we're actually like getting out of the house when we can, having some, like I've mentioned earlier, it's lovely and sunny today, like getting out in the sun, it's nice. And I think, Findmypast have actually made provisions for us working remotely as well. It's not just about the day-to-day, so it's great.
Yeah, I think, sorry, Jen, go on.
It's been really interesting as someone who has always worked from home and worked remotely to see the rest of the company kind of have to embrace that, kind of whether they wanted to or not, kind of overnight, right? And my initial reaction was, they're all finally going to understand what this is like now. But it's been quite positive, I think, right? The leadership of the company has really we have colleagues in the marketing team that have little kids and they can't go to nursery all of a sudden. And so how do you adjust? And so there's all sorts of flexible hours and as Alex was saying, like real focus on mental health and being able to take care of yourself. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to play Sam's thoughts on this, if that's all right. I'll just play this now.
So I really love working at Findmypast because obviously the people I work with are phenomenal, and I'm constantly learning something new every day. So I love that aspect. But I love what we do. I love that we dig and are curious about what went on in the past and how that connects together, and therefore how that changes your perspectives. When you discover something from the past that's related to you, how do you change your view on what, your view for the future? That's what fascinates me. The fact that you can discover something that makes a new connection or unravels a story or gives you a different perspective, that's what's important, because it ultimately reframes your thinking of that individual from the past, or it can explain so many unknown factors, and it changes what you think in the future. You can maybe have sympathy for something, or you can sort of celebrate something that happened that you didn't understand, or you can make you think, wow, I didn't realize that's what my great grandparents did. And it gives you a fresh perspective, and that's what you can take forward. That taking that fresh perspective into how you think about things moving forward is what we believe is so important, what I believe is so important. How you view things and how it changes the way you think is fascinating.
And in terms of moving things forward, I know the both of you are involved in a working group within the Findmypast, and I wondered whether you'd like to tell us a little bit more about that.
Alex, you start.
Sure. So I should probably start from kind of the beginning. For me, working in the tech industry, it is male dominated. And so when I was looking for a company, I was very much looking for somewhere that kind of valued diversity and was working to kind of combat that inequality within the tech industry. And there was a few months into kind of starting here at Findmypast. A lot has happened politically in the last year since I've joined. There's been a Black Lives Matter movement. And I think we kind of built on that to have or restart at what's called the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group, which I am a member of. And I've been kind of pushing and advocating for greater gender and ethnic diversity within the tech and engineering teams. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I'm hoping to see like big changes in the next 5 to 10 years. A lot of these things are quite slow, so it's about like making sure that we have engagement, making sure that we're doing like the little things like changing job descriptions to show like, you know, we're welcoming everyone. We want to like embrace everyone, to the kind of the bigger things of investing time in our meetups and stuff like that, to make sure that we're actually giving back to the community, because that is one thing I love about the tech community as a whole, is there is this kind of giving back a lot. So you can kind of teach other people to get into tech. And I think that's what I wanted to carry into actually my role within Findmypast as well. And the D&I group have given me a bit of that kind of oomph to get out and do that with Findmypast. And we've done some really cool things. Jen, I'll pass to you to talk more about it.
So I'm also very excited and honored, really, to be part of the diversity and inclusion group at Findmypast. Something that I'm also quite passionate about. And like Alex said, I mean, you know, tech is male dominated, but actually the corporate side of genealogy is male dominated as well, which I always find quite ironic, because the vast majority of genealogists and our customers are women. But men generally have led this industry for a very long time, for decades, if not centuries. And it's interesting to me as as far as I know, at least, I'm one of the only women in my particular role in the field of genealogy. I don't know of any other woman across any of the other major companies that have an equivalent position to mine. So that's always something that I look upon with a lot of pride. And it's a lesson I feel like I'm teaching my daughter, right? That we can generally do anything we strive for. But the D&I group is particularly important to me, because we do recognize that the vast majority of the records that we have on the site today are pretty mainstream white Christian history. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But we're working now as a team to change that. And I don't think that we would be so focused on it if it weren't for the efforts of the D&I group. And quite honestly, a lot of the motivation for that group comes from our CEO, Tamsin Todd, who is, of course, one of 2 women CEOs in the industry, which is also worth pointing out, right? She has a lot of passion for that particular work as well. And I think without her backing, I don't know that we would be making the progress that we have. But just the ability to work with a broad range of genealogists across their niche areas and their field of expertise is really interesting to me, and something that I really enjoy bringing back to that group. I reach out to a number of people, whether they're LGBTQ researchers or African American researchers, or whatever category you want to talk about. I enjoy learning from them and really just getting honest feedback from people saying, you could do this. If you took these 3 steps, we would, your presence, your position, your company would be in a better place. And those are real objectives that we can actually strive for as a content team and a licensing team, but also as a company. I think there's really great things that we can do with our product, and I'm excited to see the D&I team talking about that and working on that, and certainly with our hiring and how we talk to each other as a company, how we address each other, how we treat each other, has changed over the years. I've been with the company almost 8 years, and I've seen the culture change dramatically in that time. And I think it is because of a renewed focus on inclusivity across the board.
Yeah. One of the really interesting things, you touched on it yourself, like diversity is great, but the inclusivity is what makes the big difference. And so you can have, and it's the same in, I think a lot of tech companies get it wrong, where they kind of strive to have huge diversity, and yet when those people who are normally underrepresented in the tech industry, they come in and they don't feel that inclusion because they're they're not included. And I think Findmypast does quite a good job of making sure that we kind of see people for who they are and include them as far as we can.
Yeah. Let's get Sam's thoughts on what she feels it's like working as a woman in this industry.
I'm really proud to be part of this industry. I'm really proud to be a woman in the genealogy industry because it's driven by technology. And it's important because we need to continue to drive more girls and women coming through, doing computer science, doing technology-based degrees, and concentrate on their maths and their science. And that is phenomenally important to continue to get gender equality in key sectors moving forward.
I think she's absolutely right. It's you know, we're not going to have change overnight, but you know, every step in the right direction is another step further to what we're after, I suppose, if that makes sense. And you know, more little girls who, you know, don't maybe think it's cool to do maths or science, you know, we could be upturning all of these stereotypes. And you know, there's so many as I said at the beginning, there's so many varied roles behind the scenes at Findmypast. There's a place for everybody in essence, but in particular in tech, I think there's so much work to be done, and I think we are making positive steps.
And so many ideas that have yet to be explored, and ideas that have yet to spark, right? And those brains are out there, and those ideas are out there. We just have to find them and build them.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to add, like, one of the personally, I've come from, as I said, like history and languages. So I actually did almost like a 180 on what I thought I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to go into the charity sector and work there. And I just took a role in a tech company as a salesperson, actually, initially. And I was like, okay, this is just going to hold me over until I find the role that I really want. And I ended up just loving it and loving tech, and realizing actually it wasn't this kind of fully male-dominated kind of boring environment. It was really stimulating. It was really exciting, and that's when I decided to go into software development. And I was lucky enough to find Findmypast that have helped me continue that kind of interest and excitement. So I hope a lot of people can also make that change later on in their life, not just so early on. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. You did do quite a 180, to quote yourself. And you mentioned earlier that you'd done some courses, like coding and things like that. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more about what you know to be available that's on offer, just in case anybody watching is interested.
Yeah, so my first kind of stint into it, I went with a course called Code First Girls. And their aim was to have, I think, 10,000 women and girls go through their courses by the end of 2020, and I believe they achieved that. So they've brought these courses are designed specifically for people who are either maybe just getting interested in or thinking of a career change. So they are for people who are kind of 18 and over. And that first course I did, I think it was 8 weeks, and I did 2 hours every week, and it was held at Goldman & Sachs at the time. And they were doing it all over London in different places. They have courses everywhere. And that was my first kind of moment when I was like, I can actually do this.
Yeah.
And then I started looking into opportunities, and I mentioned before, I worked in a tech company with two founders who young founders at the time. They both came from Cambridge University, and one of the CEO was I'm not sure if I should say her name, but
we can be vague.
Yeah, she was an absolute inspiration. She was the one who kind of who gave me more information about going into the tech side of working in a tech company. And so she showed me Founders and Coders, which is a course that she went on to become a founder. And Founders and Coders, they have this brilliant kind of set up at the beginning where you have to jump through a few hoops of like testing or make your own website. You have to get a few points on Free Code Camp, which is a website where you can teach yourself to code in lots of different languages. I would highly recommend it. And also on Code Wars, which is kind of like exercises that you go online. And I was interviewed for that once I'd kind of passed those tests, or prerequisites, so they're called. And founders and coders are brilliant because they are full-time, or at the time they were full-time coding boot camp, 4 months long. So I was coding there 9 to 5, and it was completely free. And
that's amazing.
It is, like, how they did it is brilliant. And so the idea behind it was they wanted to make sure that coding and getting into the tech industry was fully accessible to those who are genuinely underrepresented. And so I had a brilliant time there. It was very intense. It was a real boot camp. They put you through your works. But I came out the other end, and I think I had a few interviews, and this was almost to the year. Almost to the day. Sorry, a year ago, I interviewed with Findmypast, so I would have finished about 3 days ago, a year ago, at Founders and Coders, interviewed for Findmypast, and I think within the week had accepted a job here. So that was my whirlwind. It was about 18 months, basically, whirlwind 18 months into coding. And I would, if there is anyone out there who's looking for a career change or a way to get younger women and girls or everyone into it, please do look out, reach out as well to those places I mentioned, and definitely go to Free Code Camp and places like that to scratch up on your skills. I couldn't recommend it more. I've loved working in software engineering and making that switch. It's really good.
I'll make sure that I link all of them in the video descriptions for everybody. Jen, anything to add on top of Alex's story?
Yeah, I don't have a story like that, unfortunately. But I would say this, so for the genealogists that are watching, if you are thinking of a career in genealogy, whether that is on your own, like putting out your shingle and taking clients, or trying to find a role with one of the major companies or somewhere in between, take advantage of all of these free opportunities. Take a coding class, take a class on SEO, take business classes, obviously. I think a lot of genealogists that are really, really skilled researchers put themselves out there and say, I'm going to start taking clients and this is going to be my career now. But we tend to forget as a group, and I'm generalizing, but we tend to forget that it's a business as much as it's not just about the research and the genealogy and the methodology. It's actually running a business and marketing yourself and knowing what your niche is amongst the rest of the thousands of professional genealogists around the world. So it's a relatively small industry, but it's important that you understand that it is an industry. It's not just something that you're passionate about, something you love doing. It's a business, it's an industry, and we have to embrace that. So take advantage of some of those programs that Alex listed off. And even if you don't take the class, work through their website, or take one of the free classes offered through your local library, or whatever it is that you can link into, because understanding how the internet works will make you a better genealogist, hands down.
I think that's great advice. Conscious of time, the last thing I wanted to touch on, a little bit for fun, but also for the inspiring element as well. I thought we could share stories of a female ancestor who's inspired us. And Alex, I was wondering if you'd like to go first.
Sure. So I've actually got something to share. I'll make a small intro. So I'm very fortunate that, like I said, members of my family are really interested in genealogy as well. And so we have already quite a few records, and we have them, the originals. So I'm going to share a couple of records. The person I have chosen to speak about is my great-grandmother. So that is my dad's mother's mother, Suzanne Carny. She was French, although she had Italian ancestors. And one of the amazing things about her was she was one of the first women to go to university to study mathematics in her local French town. And I'll share what I have here, if I can. Oh,
I think we did it at the same time.
okay. So how do I do it again?
Just click add to stream when you hover over it underneath.
I've just got stop screen.
I'll try it. There we go.
Okay, thank you. So that's her diploma. And she, one of the kind of oral history that has been passed down was that the people who were meant to be teaching her basically said, oh no, we can't teach a woman. We wouldn't know how to teach a woman. There are some people who were afraid that her mind would just not be able to hold all of that like mathematical information. It just wasn't, her brain wasn't the right kind of fit, and all these really, you know, bizarre justifications for not allowing her into the university. And we think she was one of 3 women who were, after appeal, let into university. And this was back in 1917. So you could probably see the date there, but in the bottom right. And once she did get her diplôme, she actually went on to then teach. So I've got a photo, I think, of her herself. She's wearing trousers in 1920, this is. So that is also quite out there, like garish. She's wearing trousers. But see, it's just a little something of bring her to life. And yeah, finally she went on to become a teacher, which was, again, like a huge success for someone back in the 1920s. Or this, she actually graduated, I believe, in 1919, so just after the First World War. And she went on to teach, and I couldn't find it, but I've seen photos of her where she's surrounded by her class, and she is the classic photos that you get with the rest of your class, the teacher sitting in the middle, and she's dressed in slightly different clothes to everyone else. She's the only woman, and she's surrounded by all these boys, teaching them science and mathematiques. And I just thought it was brilliant that she not only kind of said, well, no, my brain isn't going to explode if I taught mathematics. She excelled, and she went on to teach more. And so I think she passes my bar of like a very inspiring ancestor I have. So.
That's just incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now, Sam's story is a little similar, so I'm going to play hers. A little. It's a little similar. Let's see what Sam had to say.
This one is my mum. And I discovered elements of this with Findmypast, but not all of it. Most of it is from stories from my mum herself. And actually, when I look back and I put context around the stories of that time period, and I look back at the life and the actual location of where my mum lived and what my grandparents did, and thinking about actually how much money they had coming in every week, I look at what my mum achieved and actually what she fought against is really inspiring. So some of the things I think are inspiring about my mum's story. So no different to any girl growing up in the 40s and 50s. So my mum had diphtheria as a child, and because of that, she couldn't sit the entrance exam to the grammar school. And didn't really think anything of this when she told me this story. But actually, when I look back at it now, that was a bit of a defining moment for my mum, because I think that because she couldn't sit it, and she was obviously intelligent enough to get sort of into grammar school, she sort of fought against that for a long, long time. and actually then went on to secondary modern school, did well in her exams. And then my grandfather wouldn't let her go away to nursing college because it meant she was going to be living too far away from home, or she would have to travel too far to go to this nursing school. So she was only allowed to go to a typing college. And for years, I think she fought against that, and actually then went on to do sort of go up and up and up in her career. So actually what my mum fought against has inspired me, and that it's made me think how lucky I was, and what she taught me was actually don't ever, always go after what you want. Don't ever let anyone tell you you can't do it, or you can't go somewhere. You go and you do it and you experience it. So that really inspired me, and that's something I constantly try and tell my own children. But that is something that drives me, and will continue to drive me, I think, for the rest of my life.
Both very inspiring stories in slightly different ways, but I think it comes back to this education element, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think there's lots of elements. I'm very lucky to be brought up as well by a mum who's very inspiring, and I think naturally we surround ourselves, or I have been very lucky to be surrounded by strong women. But you're right in that there are limitations, and there have been limitations on women's education, and there continue to be. And it's not just their access to education, but once they get there, once they get into the job, it's still a non-ending kind of fight to say, not only have I got here, I've earned it, but also getting past that of saying I'm better than you think I am. Why do I still have to keep on proving myself? I've done this. Look, I've got the certificate to show it. kind of. So I think the job, I've showed you an ancestor from 100 years ago. The job is not finished. We still have these people who won't necessarily believe in us or understand that we've got the qualifications and we're here to work and work hard. But yeah, that was a lovely story from Sam. I love that.
Yeah. What about you, Jen?
So I have a lot of women who inspire me, and a lot of ancestors who inspire me. My grandma sits just over my shoulder on every recording, and she started me in genealogy. But I think for today, I wanted to talk about a different ancestor that I actually haven't looked at for a long time. On my mom's side of the tree, there's this woman, Mary Isabel Daniel. She was born in 1868, and she is the wife of my great-grand uncle. So it's not a direct connection at all, but she was born in Cornwall in England. And at some point in her life, around the age of 20, she immigrated to the United States. Her dad was a laborer. Her brothers were laborers. They probably weren't looking at a really bright future, I would have to assume. And she responded to a Lonely Hearts magazine ad. So some guy out in the Western states in America posted an ad and said, "I'm looking for a bride." And she answered that ad. She traveled all the way by herself at the age of 20 from this little tiny town in Cornwall to Leadville, Colorado, which at the time was a booming city because of the gold rush in Colorado, and was one of the largest cities in the West. But Leadville, and actually have family that live there now, Leadville sits at over 10,000 feet in elevation. So it's an incredibly harsh climate. So she goes from sea level in Cornwall, in this little village, to this massive mining city in the wilds of Colorado. And it had to have been just this massive culture shock. 10,000 feet in elevation, feet and feet of snow every winter. And you might get warm days in July and August, but they're very rare. It's a very, very harsh climate for humans. I've lived at 10,000 feet. It's not an easy thing to do. And that's in modern experiences. So she makes this journey by herself. She marries this man who's essentially a stranger. They have a couple of children. He dies in a mining accident. And she's only been in the States, I think less than 5 years at this point. So she answers another bride wanted ad, this time in Nebraska. She packs up the house, packs up the kids, gets on the train and goes out into the farmlands of Nebraska, which is, again, another completely different climate, marries my great granduncle and lives out the rest of her life. And I think about the tenacity and the courage she would have had to get on that boat in the first place, to make that voyage across the country, to do it twice, like to marry a man that you've never met before. I mean, when she married into my family, they literally got off the train, they said hello, they went to the courthouse, they got married, and then went to the farm. And she didn't go back into town for at least a month. Wow. Like that was it. Like, yeah, I mean, it was just that fast. And she does all this, I assume, with the motivation of just making a better life for herself and for her children, and trying to break the cycle of kind of being stuck as a laborer in a little village in England, and trying to do something new and different. And that takes guts. And I hope that I can just be as brave and courageous as Mary. And the other person in my world who really inspires me, actually, is not an ancestor, but my descendant. My daughter is incredible. And I think all parents would probably say that. And even like, older siblings and that kind of thing. But my daughter is also very brave, and I'm not quite sure where she gets that, because I don't think it's from me. But she participates in a sport that's quite rare and takes a lot of courage and guts. And she's done some things even in her short life that are really quite astounding. And I hope that I can teach her the lessons of our ancestors, so that she continues to be inspired through her life.
That's just wonderful. And I think if we can leave that as a closing message, a closing tidbit, so to speak, it is about making the future that little bit brighter, and improving things. So thank you both so much. This discussion has been really, really rewarding. I've loved hearing your stories and your insights, and it's just been lovely. So thank you so much. Are there any closing thoughts you'd like to share before we sign off?
I've really enjoyed this as well, and I think, like, thank you for organizing this and like getting us together, because this has been a really fun hour. Early stories, and of course, for me, International Women's Day is very important, making sure that we get more women and girls interested in genealogy and tech. And I'm really happy we've been able to do this. It's been good fun. Thank you.
Yeah, I would mirror that. And I would just say, it's so important to follow your passion, no matter what that is. And I think that's what comes out to me so much today, is through this conversation, is we've all done that in our own ways. Alex's story I find particularly inspiring. And I hope that that's something that everybody takes away from this session, is just follow your passion and encourage the women in your life to do that as well. It's not just about what we do as women, it's about the rest of the community holding us up and holding each other up. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everybody at home for watching today. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Alex. And also thank you, Sam. It has been an absolute pleasure. Be sure to tune back in on Friday for Friday's Live. Alex will be back and continue telling us about the incredible women and ancestors in your family tree. We always love to hear them. So take care, stay safe, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.